Hi, my name is Sean, and today's book review is on the Live Sound Manual. It's here's what it looks like on the cover. It's the kind of the Bible of sound reinforcement in the music industry as far as learning sound and production if you plan on being in a band or doing it professionally for a band, like in big events like concerts and auditoriums. Could be anything. Could be working in an event center where they're doing marriages. So it's kind of it's a basic guide for everything that's out there as far as sound reproduction goes. It's a must-have to get in the industry. As far as even before you even go to school, I would get this book, because it's kind of the foundation for everything else as far as the music industry goes. It's called the Live Sound Book. It's published by Backbeat Books, and I've got the 2002 edition, but there may be a later edition nowadays. So if you don't want to buy used and they got a new copy out there, a new edition, it's going to be even more up to date than the one I've got. I'm going to start off with what it covers. Shows you how to signal sound sources. That covers everything from mics, DJ boxes, anything that covers sound up on stage. That's probably the first thing you want to learn how to do, is set up mics and personal mics. There's different types of mics and stuff that you're gonna want to learn how to set up. So that's the first thing you will want to learn in getting started. Okay, the next thing that's covered is the mixer. Chapter 2 is on the mixer. Mixer is everything that mixes that sound off stage. Whether it's, and you can have 24 channel mixers, you can have 50 channel mixers. It depends on how big a venue it is. If it's a full concert that's in an auditorium, you could have as much as 50 mixers out there, just because there's a lot of stuff on stage. It depends on what's going on. So mixers are pretty important. That's the next stage, and sound reinforcement is understanding mixers. The next thing was pretty important is the FX racks. FX racks, you notice the first thing when you come in the auditorium, they're just stacked up, and if there's a lot of lights and stuff going on, you're like, man, what is all that about? You know, all that is FX racks. So everything is special effects, whether it's lighting, sound, or anything that's going on stage as far as sound mixing goes and stuff that you want an added effect to, or an echo in the auditorium room, or anything that you're going to have for effects that go on, and it's where a lot of the money is at. So it's important that you have an understanding of FX racks, because there's a lot of money involved in FX racks and presentation on the show, and something you'd want to make sure you know before you go to a company like MediaTek, or a school like MediaTek, or if you're just going to do small time bands and stuff. It's pretty important stuff, because that's about 65% of the stage show as far as lighting goes and stuff like that, unless you're doing somebody like George Thorogood or Elvis Presley, which is basically just basic lighting. There's no sound, there's no lighting effects, there's no show. All you get is George Thorogood or Elvis Presley. There are some musicians that don't have any fancy lighting show and stuff. It's just about the music. But that's pretty important. Another thing is, next thing would be power amps. Power amps is everything that's going to amplify your sound. It's also having a basic electrical knowledge on circuit breakers and stuff, and how much amperage and voltage you have in the auditorium. It's pretty important because you don't want to get your whole stage set up and find out you don't have enough power, or your breaker box downstairs doesn't have enough power to handle your stage, and now what are you going to do? So having a good knowledge of power amps and understanding what your voltage limits are and their peak performance and all that stuff is pretty important as far as when you get set up. So if you had an electricity knowledge or electrical license or something like that, sometimes the big stage shows hiring electricians, so you don't have to really worry about that, other than making sure that you have your equipment is lined up with what the power can supply out there. So it's pretty important. The next thing is speakers. That's important too, because you're filling different spaces, whether it be an auditorium, an arena, how much projection you're going to get out of the speakers, how does the person in the last seat out there in the auditorium, are they getting good sound? So speakers is pretty important, especially when you get into a big events. As far as bar bands go and stuff, that's not as important, because most bar performances and stuff are a lot more enclosed. So you're really only having a basic sound system. That's why a lot of bands don't have to spend a whole lot of money when they're first starting out, because most of the places you're going to play at are not going to be big arenas, unless you're just a real hot band that gets a recording contract right off the bat. But most of the bands don't spend a whole lot of money on speakers, because of they just not going to be playing big venues. So it tells you what kind of speakers you want to get, what kind of speakers you would have to play in big events if you're going to be doing the big shows and stuff. Not all the people that buy the sound manual, some are just bands that don't have the money even to hire a sound band. They have to learn it themselves, especially when they're first getting started. So sometimes, they have to do it themselves. They don't have the money to hire a professional sound person. So speakers are pretty important, because especially when you get into larger venues and stuff, where you have a lot more people involved, and how you place the speakers is also pretty important. So it's a pretty important aspect of sound reinforcement. Putting it all together, that is what you see going on before the show starts. A lot of people didn't know, especially in the band arena acts, there's a lot of people and stuff involved in putting all that stuff together. That's why it's called the music industry, because it's not just a small business. It's a lot of production that goes involved in the putting all that together, especially when you get into the big acts. It's an industry. There's about maybe 40 people putting that set together, whether it's electricians, sound reinforcement people, and they all have to work together to put that together. Now, if you're a small bar band and stuff, you've got a limited time to put your stuff up, and then the show is gonna go on in the evening, usually in the evening or something, and your stuff has to be up and running and ready to go, because there's no rehearsal when the people are already out there. You just go on stage and play. They don't want to hear a bunch of practicing and stuff while there are people sitting in the bar or the club. If they don't, it's just be up and running, ready to go. So putting it all together is pretty important. Getting all that stuff going has to be all up and running in time for showtime. And the big events, you're talking to people paid a lot of money for the show. Sometimes I paid the scalper $300 for a show. I mean, I better get my $300 worth. It was for a U2 Stadium Act show, and I want to get that show better be going on, or I'm going to be pissed off. So, and when you get into the big arenas and stuff, big events, there's a lot more people involved as far as putting it up. That show has to go on. The big time music industry, if you want to do big events, they're not looking for people that have axes to grind. It's a lot of expensive equipment. You're talking millions of dollars worth of equipment, especially that goes into the arena acts, and they're not looking for people that have axes to grind, racial axes, whatever. You have to work as a team. They're looking for team players. So if you don't fit that description, I would stay in the small time. Because the big event is everything is teamwork, and so it's pretty important when it comes to putting it all together. Sound check and show time. That's pretty important too, as I told you earlier, you have a limited amount of time when it comes on the band or it's showtime and rehearsal. It's usually about an hour or 2 hours before the show, and then there's a last minute sound check. You'll see somebody run out on stage. I never liked that. I mean, a lot of the roadies want to get in front of a lot of people and stuff. I can understand that because you're always backstage and nobody knows you're back there. But usually it doesn't look great, somebody running across the stage before the show to check a mic or something. So this is pretty critical as far as the last 2 minutes, on the last 5 minutes before the curtain comes down. It's showtime rehearsal. Usually what's going on during the rehearsal is there's a stage manager or other usually is going around the arena to make sure that everybody's going to get a good sound before the show, because everybody, you've paid $75 for a ticket, and no matter where you sit, you want to hear a good live sound. So showtime rehearsal is pretty important. Another one is buying PA gear. Buying PA gear, this is pretty important, especially when you're a small time act and you're just playing the bar scene. And small venues, you don't want to spend a whole lot of money, but if you're buying used equipment, it'll tell you what you should be looking for and what to buy. The big events, it's just as important. It's just as important for a different reason. The band is a big show, a big production, and you want to have the equipment to fill that production need, whether it be a lighting person, as far as sound goes, you want to make sure for that big event you got the proper gear. But a small time acts, bar acts and stuff, you're just buying a basic sound system that you want to sounds good. Doesn't necessarily have to look good. It can be kind of a little bit beat up and stuff, but as long as it sounds good, that's all you care about as far as a small-time band goes, you don't want to spend a whole lot of money when you're getting started. You can go bankrupt. It is a business. You have to know how to market your band. You have to know what venues you can play at. You'll find out there's a shortage of places to play. It's been a problem for quite some time in the foundings of the music industry back in the 30s. It's always been a problem. Not too far in the future, I'm gonna maybe put a party together or something for maybe lobbying or something to make an improvement on that. But for right now, being a small time act or a large act, it's pretty important as to what you're buying. You want to make sure that what you're buying is what's going to meet your needs as far as where your band's going to be going. The music industry is a business, and gigging and touring is pretty important in marketing, as far as marketing your band. When you're first starting out, you can't afford a $35,000, $40,000 a year marketing major, because all you're doing is playing small acts on a limited budget. You're going to go broke. So it's pretty important, as this aspect goes, being a small time band, you have to be able to do that on your own. I mean, especially with rock and roll, had a big image of the band's partying and all that stuff. That was a big image they created, but it is a business. You can talk to people like Chad Hennings, who's mentioned a number of articles in music magazines. It is a business, and you have to be able to put that aside and run the business. He had problems with one member of his band, who was making great music, but he didn't want to pay attention to the business aspect of it, and that's just as important. Gigging, touring, and stuff is pretty important, especially when you're a small time act, and you have to be able to market your type of music and match it with an audience and know where to play at. You don't want to book a gig at a place whose people are mostly country western, and you're rock and roll, and that's not what they're listening to, because hardly anybody's going to show up. You're not going to make any money, and you probably won't be asked back because hardly anybody showed up for the show. So this is pretty important as far as marketing goes in the music industry. Large time acts usually hire a marketing team, and they're experts at what they do. So there's a lot more involved. You're talking to somebody with a 4-year college degree, and they want their money also. So when you're talking small time acts, that's not as important, but you do want to have a background in it, especially when you're starting out, because it's pretty important. Okay, that's the conclusion for this book. It's a basic guide, but it's a pretty important book as far as getting into the music industry. I would highly recommend it for 2 reasons. One, if you're a small time act, you're going to have to do the job yourself. You don't have the money to hire in sound people. You don't have the money to hire in booking people. Doing your tour managing and all that stuff. You got to be able to do that on your own. I mean, as I said earlier, the music industry has an image, especially when it came to rock and roll, that there's just a lot of play and all that trashing hotel rooms and that stuff. But they had people that were booking the acts. Had people marketing people and all that stuff that go along with it when they're a big time act. Small time acts, you have to do the job yourself. You can't be out there partying and stuff. When you book a tour and stuff, you got to be out there and you got to show up at the gigs. You got to book it in front of people and stuff, and all that is important as far as being a small time act. And there's limited profits. You have to watch your money, or you're out of money and you're not touring anymore. So that ends this lecture on live sound, Nigel.